The following is a review for critical, analytical, and educational purposes. It is protected under Article 17 and 107 of the United States Fair Use Code. This is not an infringement on copyright. Please enjoy the review.
So, after the change of color in late 1969, is really the end of an era with Doctor Who, as the format changed into a more earthbound sci-fi monster of the week type show. This was really kept for 4 years, with several of these stories during these years going to other planets, but it helped get the show's ratings back on their feet, and kept it running well into the end of the 70s. The story we're looking at today is the first from this new era, and the only classic Who story filmed entirely on film. This allows it to be uniquely released on high definition in Blu-ray format. It also marks the turning point in the writing career of Robert Holmes, who had just had something click. I mean, before now, with his two previous efforts on Who, the Autons and the Space Pirates, especially the Space Pirates, well, they aren't the best stories. So here, he really gets to improve himself. Welcome back to Doctor Change. We'll be looking at the beginning of the third Doctor, as played by Jon Pertwee, in Spearhead from Space. So, after a new set of titles to introduce the new Doctor, the episode opens with an establishing shot of the Earth in color. At a unit research base, a scientist notices some strange readings. The scientist and his superior suppose they're meteorites, but they seem to be flying in some sort of a formation. They land in a nearby forest with a bang, seen by a farmer/poacher Sam Seeley. They are, of course, reported as meteorites, but said to be investigated. Meanwhile, the TARDIS materializes in a forest and a man falls out. In London, we are introduced to Dr. Elizabeth Liz Shaw, played by Carolyn John, who was brought to Unit HQ to meet with Brigadier Lethbridge-Stewart. Liz is an expert in meteorites from Cambridge and makes it clear that she doesn't have any interest in doing any sort of security work. When she's told that they deal with alien invasions, she's skeptical, especially when told that the meteorites landed on Earth this morning. I mean, meteorites can't land. They're meteorites. She gives up when told that this was the second batch of meteorites to land on Earth. The man that fell out of the TARDIS has been taken to a hospital, and a unit the Brigadier explains that there have been previous invasions of Earth. He explains that he had help from a mysterious doctor when he gets a call from Captain Monroe, who informs him about the man and the TARDIS. The Brigadier has a guard put on the TARDIS and leaves to go to the hospital, and the man has had his chest x-rayed and blood has been taken, but the x-ray seems to have two hearts, and the blood is not any sort of human blood type, confirming that this man is the Doctor newly regenerated into his third incarnation. A porter overhears these problems and calls the tabloids just to try to get some money off this medical marvel. In the woods, Seeley makes off with one of the meteorites while the unit soldiers start a search. The Doctor briefly wakes up and tries to get his shoes before going out into unconsciousness again. The Brigadier, Liz, and unit have arrived to deal with the press by doing the smart thing and saying, "No comment," plainly because they have no comment yet. He issues guards with live ammunition while they go in to see the Doctor. Dr. Henderson, the man looking over the Doctor, is baffled, and the Brigadier doesn't recognize the Doctor, but the Doctor recognizes the Brigadier in a very small fit of consciousness. He takes a mirror to see what he looks like and is appalled at the new face, which just isn't him. He thinks that it's distinctive, though, and might work before going out again. The Brigadier tries waking him up, but doesn't work. He orders Monroe to move him to London HQ ASAP and leaves. In the lobby, there is a strange man who just has one face and just uses the phone, who leaves without saying any sort of word. In the woods, Seeley is checked by the unit soldiers and told to go home and stay there until the woods are de-restricted. The doctor wakes up again and tries to get his shoes, but his hearts are beating irregularly. Dr. Nathan gives him these shoes from his locker, which the doctor clings to for dear life. Henderson and the nurse think he might have some sort of a brain damage. They go to check, and the doctor takes the TARDIS key out of his shoe before lying back down. Henderson is knocked out by two men in suits, and the doctor wheeled away to the back of a truck. He wheels himself down the hospital driveway while the strange man from earlier follows suit in the truck. Unit soldiers follow suit until the two of them find the wheelchair and shoot the doctor in the head, accidentally. This leads into episode 2, where the doctor is taken back into the hospital, where Henderson informs the Brigadier Monroe that the doctor is extremely unconscious. The bullet only caused a burn on the scalp, but the coma that's followed might just be self-induced. The TARDIS key is given to Unit as the TARDIS is sent to headquarters. Outside, the Brigadier examines a shell of one of the meteorites, which is plastic, and a guard is placed on the area. Monroe holds a photo of the strange reporter, which from earlier, whom he finds odd somehow. Meanwhile, at a plastics factory, John Ransom is furious that he'd be let go with a letter after being promised a line of dolls that he designed. He meets with George Hibbert, who can only say that they changed everything and for Ransom to stay away from his workshop. The reporter from the hospital enters as Hibbert has some sort of a neck pain and rushes Ransom at the door, who offers help him if anything is wrong, because he's been acting really weirdly. At Unit HQ, Liz confirms that the meteorites aren't meteorites and must be manufactured. She's still skeptical about the alien thing and the doctor. Meanwhile, at the factory, Channing, the reporter, forces Hibbert into increasing the pulsation unit rates. At that moment, Sam Seeley takes out the meteorite from his shed, which alerts an Auton to its presence. But then when he puts the energy unit away, the Auton is just let go, I guess. General Scobie arrives at the unit, who questions why they'd have a police box, to which Liz flippantly says it's not a police box, but a spaceship. Meanwhile, the doctor is sneaking around the hospital and hides in the shower as a doctor arrives and meets with Henderson before going in to see the patient, but leaves some clothes in the change room. The doctor then finishes his shower and steals the man's clothing, slipping outside the hospital, stealing his car in a sort of failed attempt at comedy. The Brigadier is annoyed at Liz for her skeptical comments, as one of the meteorites is found to be pulsating and is sent to the unit labs. The car carrying it, however, is ran off the road into a tree as the Auton steals the control sphere. The doctor arrives at unit with a wristwatch that homes in on the TARDIS. He asks the Brigadier for the key, who demands the doctor answers all of his questions. The doctor goes on about his new face for a bit and says, "How do you do to Liz?" in Delphon, a language that communicates through their eyebrows. He gets intrigued by the meteorites, thinking that it was a hollow sphere, and agrees to help them if he gets his key to the TARDIS in return. Back at the plastics factory, Ransom climbs over a fence while General Scobie's there for a dummy replica from Madame Tussauds. Ransom's taken to his old office, which he finds to be full of futurist equipment and shop window dummies of all things. He's taken aback by this as a dummy starts to walking towards him and sneaks up behind him. Yes, that really is the cliffhanger we're going for. This leads into episode 3, where the dummy's hand opens and shoots at Ransom, chasing him outside while Scobie leaves the factory. Channing and Hibbert see an Auton send the Auton after Ransom to kill him, because he's seen too much now. Ransom runs straight into unit soldiers, while Meg Seeley, Sam's wife, warns her husband about what's been happening with the meteorites. The unit soldiers try to get Ransom to snap out of it, who just babbles about creatures made in the factory and is sent to Unit HQ and the Brigadier. Liz has become stumped on what they can do for the analysis. The doctor says they'll need a lateral molecular rectifier, which he conveniently happens to have in the TARDIS. Liz is skeptical that anything could be in the TARDIS because of its size. Well, the doctor explains that it's dimensionally transcendental, so bigger on the inside than it is on the outside. He persuades her to get the key from the Brigadier. Sam Seeley asks the unit soldiers if there's a reward for finding meteorites, which he's difficult to get answers out of, while Hibbert is told to deal with any unit soldiers that come calling. Ransom explains what he saw in the forest to the Brigadier at the unit when Liz comes in to take the TARDIS key off the Brigadier's desk. She gives it to the doctor, who opens the lock and slips right inside. The Brigadier comes in and is furious at Liz while the TARDIS starts to dematerialize, but smokes and relands. The Doctor stumbles out and tries to say he was just testing. He's realized that he's exiled here on Earth, and says he'll help, but he'll need more evidence about these cases. They go to talk to Ransom, who, as the Doctor suggests, a visit to the plastics factory. Seeley ends up giving that he knows where the location of one of these meteorites when his wife finds it in the chest at their house. An Auton is sent to lecture just as Seeley is up at the location. The Brigadier, Doctor, Liz, and Ransom arrive at the scene. Ransom is told to stay with the soldiers, while the other three in Monroe go to Seeley's home to find the meteorite. Meg pulls the chest away as she hears a noise from inside her home. She goes inside to see the Auton, which starts to chase the old woman around. Meg does the smart thing and grabs her shotgun and fires at it. Sadly, this is Doctor Who, where most aliens are immune to bullets. So the Auton knocks her unconscious and searches the house, and is able to find the swarm leader's sphere. The unit arrives and makes the Auton be recalled because it's too soon for any sort of major battle, while the Doctor and Liz find the sphere to take back to headquarters. The Auton goes and kills Ransom by ripping into the tent that Ransom was being held in. The Doctor, the Brigadier, and Liz go to the plastics factory and meet with Hibbert, who doesn't believe a word they say about Ransom and claims he was just making trouble. The Doctor asks if the mannequins can move, which of course they can, which of course they can't because they're mannequins. The Brigadier tries to get authority from Scobie to raid the factory, while the Doctor finds that there's some sort of intelligence inside the globe. Scobie says he'll give all the support he's needed when there's a knock on his door. And at the door is the plastic mannequin version of Scobie, who attacks the real General. This leads into the final part, episode 4, where meanwhile at Unit the Doctor blows up some equipment that analyzes the control sphere, which they suppose is part of a hive mind. The Auton Scobie calls the Brigadier and tells him that he cannot raid the factory because they're doing some important work there. When the Brigadier mentions that Scobie has a facsimile made, we cut to Madame Tussauds, where the Doctor and Liz go to find that all of the plastic replicas of people are high up in the government and army. Scobie's just standing there while the Doctor notices that there's a wristwatch on his dummy that is keeping time. Well, that's weird. I mean, that wouldn't really happen. So they decide to wait for closing time to investigate further. At the plastics factory, Channing explains that all of the Autons are to be activated that evening, while the Auton Scobie gets control of the control sphere from Unit. The Doctor and Liz emerge from hiding when they explore, but hide when Channing and Hibbert enter. They confirm that this Scobie in the museum is the real Scobie, and all of the Auton duplicates start to walk off the exhibit and begin the plan. Hibbert finds the Doctor and Liz, and the Doctor tries to make Hibbert see that Channing has his mind hostage, but it doesn't work, and he leaves without giving any information about the Doctor or Liz's position. The Doctor and Liz go to the Brigadier, who has to move against the factory. The Auton Scobie and Channing decide to terminate Hibbert because he isn't necessary anymore. Liz and the Doctor are building something late in the night, and we cut to early next morning on the streets of London. This leads into one of the most iconic sequences in Doctor Who history, where shop window dummies come to life and start killing people while Unit can't do anything to stop them, except a weapon that the Doctor's building that he doesn't even know if it'll work correctly. Hibbert tries to sabotage the Auton's control room and asks Channing what he is. Channing is the Nestene consciousness that has come to conquer Earth. Hibbert is killed and vaporized by an Auton, while outside the Doctor begins a raid on the factory. The Auton Scobie tries to stop them, but the Doctor uses his weapon, which deactivates the Auton and makes it lose its features, and makes the real Scobie wake up to the crowd's, utter surprise. The Doctor and Liz sneak into the main control room while the Brigadier soldiers attack the Autons on the outside. The Doctor confronts Channing about their plans. They plan to conquer the Earth, and as the weapon stops working, and tentacles comes out of the tank and attack the Doctor in a very, silly fashion, while Liz fixes the problem and deactivates the Autons and kills that portion of the Nestene consciousness. Back at Unit, the Doctor and Liz explain what they built and that the Nestenes might try again. The Brigadier asks if the Unit can count on the Doctor's help. The Doctor has a few terms that must be met. First, he wants a laboratory and help from Liz. He also wants an Edwardian car and new clothes to persuade him to stay. The Brigadier asks his name, where the Doctor turns to the camera and just says Smith, Dr. John Smith, and one of the few bits of comedy that actually works in this story. Final thoughts?
Spirited from Space is always heralded as a classic Doctor Who story in the eyes of the fans, and as a great jumping-on point for the fans of the new series to experience classic Who. With the first point, I have to disagree. I mean, it's still a great jumping-on point, and a really good story, but it's not the classic everyone says it is. Before I get to go the few flaws that this story has that stop it from being a classic, let's go into what makes just the story really good. First off, Spirit from Space looks amazing. I mean, it's the first story in color, and this is especially apparent in the Blu-ray release of the story, which I have seen. This is mostly because, well, it was shot on film, so it was restored in high definition. The direction also makes it look really good, especially when Scobie is confronted by his double, because they hadn't started using CSO yet, which would be implemented in the next story, Doctor Who and the Silurians. The sequence in episode 4 with the Autons coming to life is also pretty chilling, as you get to see people shot and killed. Derek Martinus has to be applauded for his work, being able to keep the Autons from looking too terribly silly, because, I mean, really, they're men in plastic masks and boiler suits. The acting in the story is also great, from the supporting cast having to give it their all. This helps episode 1 and 2, where the Doctor is pretty much out of the action, and the plot focuses on Liz and the Brigadier. Liz, who makes a really good impression as a companion, and although she only stuck around for 4 stories, I wish there was more of her. Also help you that the script is actually really good, with all the weaker elements, with really the most weaker elements being a lot of forced comedy. Yes, the comedy is very forced in the story, which brings me to what brings the story down from being a classic, and that's really the performance given by Jon Pertwee. Now, before you come and lynch me, hold on a second and let me explain. Pertwee's not a bad actor, or a bad doctor. Heck, some of his stories are among my favorites because of his Doctor. I mean, Inferno is undeniably my second favorite episode of the show. Here, however, he really just doesn't know how he wants to do the Doctor in Justice, and it comes off as kind of childish in stark contrast to other seasons where he's more suave and still a little, but this isn't a mark on Pertwee. Also, it doesn't really do the transition right from Patrick Troughton to Pertwee, because because this is only the second time regeneration has happened, you really need to know your new Doctor, because, I mean, the audience isn't going to, and I mean, sure, they may have accepted it by now, but the last time this happened was 4 years previous. I mean, and really, I believe that really one of the few times that the transition was done right was in Power of the Daleks, so this is a tough story to follow as a post-regeneration story. But still, all in all, I give Doctor Who, Spearhead from Space, an 83% for being an honestly great story that falls flat due to the writing of the Third Doctor and some bad transitional elements. I definitely recommend that you get the story because it is so good, and it was released as a special edition in the Maniacan box set in Regions 2 and 4 Region 2 and Region 4 in 2011, and individually in Region 1 in 2012. I'd also recommend getting the Blu-ray release, which released in 2013 in all regions, which has special bonus features, and I think a special commentary track, and is still available. Alternatively, if you're new and getting into Classic Who, also it was released in Region 1 alongside the Aztecs, the Tomb of the Cybermen, and Pyramids of Mars in 2013 under the Doctor Revisited range, which would be a great release to get if you haven't seen any of these Doctors. Well, now we have a problem for the fact that Liz, although only staying on for 4 episodes, never left on screen. And, well, I know that there is, a book that shows her leaving. I don't own that book, and I don't have access to it. So we should probably move on to the introduction of the next companion, right? Well, problem there is I've already reviewed the story that introduced the next companion, Terror of the Autons. That was my 3rd review. So next time we'll be jumping ahead quite a bit to the 10th anniversary of Doctor Who, the special, which was the first big celebration of the show in The Three Doctors. Thanks for watching.
Nobody touched anything, did they?
No.
Well, you heard it, though, didn't you?
Yes, and felt it too. Could it be that stuff outside?
No, I don't think so. Hello, what's this? Oh, seems strangely familiar. Is it yours, Joe?
Flute? No.
Well, properly speaking, it's a recorder.
Thank you. I was wondering where that had got to. You haven't been trying to play this, have you? Oh, I can see you've been doing the TARDIS up a bit. I don't like it. Oh, my word. Oh, dear. We are in trouble, aren't we? Just as when I turned up.
Doctor!
Where did you spring from?
Now, don't tell me. Corporal Benton, isn't it?
Sergeant Benton now.
How do you do, my dear
Nice
fellow?
to see you.
I haven't seen you since that nasty business with the Cybermen.
All those years ago.
Is he, and how did he get in here?
Well, it's a bit difficult to explain, Joe.
He's not one of them, is he?
Well, not so much one of them as one of us. One of me, to be precise.
Oh, no. I'm sorry, my dear. I hate to be contrary, but I can see he's a little bit confused, poor old chap, and I do feel you should have the correct explanation. You don't mind, do you?
Yes.
I didn't think you would. You see, Joe, I may call you Joe Maintime. You see, he is one of me.
Oh, I see. You're both Time Lords.
Well, quite. Well, not quite.
Oh.
Not just Time Lords. We're the same Time Lord.
Now, please, you're only confusing my assistant. Joe, it's all quite simple. I am he, and he is me.
And we are all together, Goo Goo Kichu?
What?
It's a song by the Beatles.
How does it go?
Oh, please be quiet.
Look, is he really you?
Yes, I'm afraid so.
I think he is, Miss Grant. You see, when the Brig and I first met the Doctor, he looked like him.
How?
Yeah, that's what I'd like to know. You've got no right to be here.